Welcome, everyone. We are so excited to have this very special guest here today, welcoming Nicole Wheeler, who is a famous doula, birth keeper now after appearing on our Born at Home film. We are so stoked that you decided to join us on that spontaneous interview a few months ago, I guess now. It's been probably more than that. So I'll just run everyone through your bio, Nick. So Nicole is a birth keeper supporting births at home. She has experience supporting women who choose to birth at home without a medical provider, which is called free birth, at home with the care of a midwife, home birth, and also women who birth in the hospital system. She is also the author of the free birth children's book, The Most Magically Ordinary Day, which I resonate with so much. So thank you so much for coming on to chat with us today, Nicole.
Thank you, ladies, for having me. I'm really excited to chat to you again. Yeah, it was maybe November last year. The very rushed while I was in Melbourne, but was I coming back? And
it was chaos, wasn't it?
It was a bit, but thanks to my brother and all his tech gear, we got it done.
Actually, now I'm just remembering too, it was the day that my suburb had no internet.
It was.
And so I had to go to a payphone and get free Telstra internet onto my phone and then calling you at the same time while you were recording to ask you the questions.
Yeah, it was a big day.
And that just confirms how we talk about it. It took us right up until the end to finish it.
Yeah. You're like, if you can do it this week, great. Otherwise, it's too late. And I'm like, oh, I'll make it work.
Oh, thank you so much, because we know how much effort it takes to film and record something. So honestly, thank you so much.
It was my pleasure. And I really, being asked to actually talk about the subject of free birth on a documentary like that, I was willing to kind of do anything, because I think it was really important to have that part spoken about as well, because it's birthing at home.
What do you think? So, obviously you didn't see the film before, you had no idea what we were doing other than the discussions that we had. Do you think, are you happy with our representation of free birth in the film?
Yes. Yeah, I am. I know one of the women who was in the film who had a free birth that you spoke to as well. I didn't know that she was in it at the time that we had spoken, but I do know her. So I think the message that she was able to give, and then having my little snippet on what the definition is, and just having it mentioned and on a big screen, I think was the start of a very important conversation that's definitely continuing within Australia especially, but there's a lot of other countries around the world where this conversation is coming up, and it's a lot of people who have big platforms are very loud about it. So yeah, I think it's important from all aspects of people who are providers, people who actually work with the women, and the women themselves get a chance to have a platform and a voice.
Yeah, totally.
Absolutely.
I was just thinking we could even run our audience through just a couple of definitions, because even after I had my first birth, I had still not even heard of a doula. So, and when we started interviewing, who was our lovely doula in the film? Moran.
Yeah.
That absolutely blew my mind. And I remember just thinking, why did I not know about this with my first pregnancy? So could you run us through, firstly, what a doula is? And is that any different to a birth keeper?
Okay.
And then how they both, I guess, differ from a midwife as well, if you can.
Sure.
Big questions there.
Yep, all good. So a doula, really, if someone asks me what I do and I say I'm a doula, I break it down to being a professional birth support person. So I see my role as supporting a woman during her pregnancy and her labor/birth and into her postpartum journey. We all do things a little bit differently as to which parts of that we pick up, what we do within that time frame, but that's kind of how I see it. A birth keeper, for me, I chose the name birth keeper for my business and for how I describe myself. when I'm supporting women who aren't actually birthing within the system. So a doula these days, especially in the States, is starting to become more of a medicalized term. There are doulas who are now employed by hospitals in America. They are registered as well, where as the original doula wasn't a registered person. She was a woman who happened to be in your neighborhood, a friend, a sister, someone like that who just attended you during your pregnancy and birth, who had had that experience before. So then was coming in to just assist and attend whatever was needed. And then you would have the old wise woman or medicine woman or herbalist in the community, who was then known as a midwife, would attend if something else was needed other than just physical, emotional, spiritual support. So that's where the birth keeper part comes from. I don't attend hospital births anymore. I did for the first 5 years of my business, but I've pulled back from that now, and I just support women who are choosing to birth at home in whatever way they deem to be the safest for them. And then midwives are the ones who technically now have the medical training, and it's a name that's now been licensed by governments around the world, to attend and provide medical support to women who are birthing at a hospital or birthing at home.
Yeah, and I thought it was beautiful as well that a lot of people choose to have both now.
Yeah.
So if they have a home birth, obviously they're going to have their midwives there, but then they might also have a doula. So even if it's just them, it might be, some emotional support for them, or to, help hubby with different things. Or if there's other children there. I had a doula and she actually baked a birthday cake with my son while I was giving birth to my daughter and played Lego with him.
Yeah.
So it was it was just so not like just to have that extra person there that just felt like a lovely maternal energy.
Yeah, and
was so important.
And that's really important, especially when you're birthing. I mean, when you're birthing anywhere, but especially when you're birthing at home, regardless if you have a midwife, the midwife is there for the medical part if it's needed. But a doula is really kind of like the family member that you pay, because we come without any judgment. We come without any, well, I would do this and I would do that, and you should be doing this, or what are you doing? Like they have fear, they haven't seen birth in this way. We come with an open arm and an open mind just to go, what do you want? Whatever that is, that's okay. And I trust you as a full-grown adult to make those decisions for yourself, regardless of whether or not I would make them. And there's a difference in that. If you look at, especially then if you look at anyone that has a medical background, they can say that they will support you in the decisions you're making, but there is always going to be a line that they cannot cross. Whereas for me, there is no line. It's completely up to the woman to make full decisions, and I have no say in any of that at all whatsoever. And I've worked with a lot of home birth midwives, and I love that. Like, I love going into a space where there's the primary midwife and then the second midwife arrives, and then I'm there, and then the partner's there, and there's some kids there, and this whole room is just full of these people who are loving on and supporting this woman who's in her birthing journey. It's the best feeling in the world.
So beautiful. It's just like the way it should be,
Yeah.
It just feels like
Yep.
that's what it all should just be like.
Yeah.
The woman at the center, and then everyone who just loves on her around the outside. Like that energy would just really kind of infuses into her and allows her to just open up and
be as vulnerable and as open physically and emotionally as you're ever going to be in your life. You're not as open in any other aspect of life. And just to know that you've got someone there that believes in you, trusts you, and is willing to just sit. I think as well that's really strong doula, birth keeper role, is that we are capable of sitting in a woman's discomfort.
And also that you've seen birth so many times work well,
Yeah.
like natural physiological birth. So you come with that confidence of,
Yeah.
you're a woman,
Yep.
your body can do this,
Yep.
you and the baby can do this. And that's so special, as opposed to someone who's seen a lot of things go wrong and might have that bias because that's what they're looking for, all those kind of cues.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, if you only ever see birth happen in a theatre, then that's what you think birth is. If you've only ever seen birth happen in a hospital room surrounded by panicked providers, that's what you learn birth is. So I've seen that side, but I'm lucky and, well, not even lucky, I was very determined within my role that I would support women in that aspect, but I would always support women in a home as well. So I got to continually see what birth actually is.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking, Nicole, because I'm a really practical person. Like, so because I didn't have a doula at my birth, I just had my midwives. And like, what do you do? Like, other than like sitting there watching and trusting and like holding space, but like, what do you actually,
A lot of that.
What do you do?
I mentor some doulas as well. So a lot of it is actually sitting and actually being comfortable with the fact that I might not be called on to do anything, that I might actually just be and be there, and that's okay. If I'm called to do things, it could be setting up a birth pool if the partner hasn't done that yet, running hot water, a lot of hot water boiling, jugs, kettles, pots, pans, all of that sort of stuff. Like I've done it. Checking that the mother's water bottle is full. If she has kids and they're around and it's during the daytime, they have met me previously, so they are comfortable with me actually, playing the Lego, making Play-Doh, doing colouring in, going for a walk. If it's been quite a long period of time, especially in the home, partners can go and have a sleep. And I'm like, actually, you know what? You've been awake for 12 hours. I'm here. Go and have a sleep. If something changes, I'll come and wake you up. But at the moment, we're like, she's okay. So you go and have a rest, because when I go home and the baby's here, they're the ones that have the responsibility to then look after mum and baby. So they also need to be tended to as well. So yeah, it's checking in on them as well.
It's almost like you are the mental load of what the woman would normally need to be catering to or thinking about, the kids and the dinner and getting everybody sorted. And it's like you take that on so she can just completely relax.
Yeah, I've actually never put it in that description before, but it can be just that. It can be that. So then the partner can be fully present for his wife or partner as well, because at the end of the day, they made this baby together, and the two of them together is all that's actually needed. But then, yes, to have that extra person that can just kind of tend to everything else is exactly what I do. Sometimes I'm there just to look at a woman while she is giving birth and hold her hand, or pour some water down her back, or turn the lights down. I do actually take a camera as well, so I take photos and things like that too. But yeah, it's very much just emotional support.
Yeah. Would there be any, everyone always talks about the crisis of confidence moment where it's, I don't know if I can do this. Do you had to do much of the talking through? Yes, you can. You're already doing it.
Yeah, I've done that before. In the process of obviously working with my clients for the months leading up to, we talk a lot about how they show up in those moments in their life previously. So I get a really good understanding of what that looks like for them. So it might actually not even be them saying things. It couldn't be them responding to stimulus, or how they're acting or how they're sounding. And I've obviously seen lots of births, so the sounds and smells are the same.
Yeah.
Like you can smell and sense when a baby is getting really close. It's just a thing. Once you've seen it and been in it a lot, you kind of just like, yeah, okay. Not that I would ever say that in a room, but you kind of just have this inkling, right? So it's just being even like just holding a hand or putting a hand on a shoulder just to like bring the shoulders down. I don't even have to say it majority of the time. I just need to touch a client's shoulder and they already know, oh, yeah, okay, I need to relax. So it's also developing a really close connection and trust and bond with them as well prior to them having their baby, so that they know when I'm in that space, I'm there for them. And I completely trust in their decision-making, in their intuition, not necessarily in birth as such, but in their ability to make decisions for themselves in that space.
So you mentioned obviously building that relationship. So I know from having a doula, we had quite a few appointments before the birth and then also after the birth.
Mm-hmm.
So can you kind of run us through just a description of what those might look like?
They can be different depending on whether the client has had previous births or not. So if we're talking about a woman who maybe has had a couple of previous births before, not in the home, then the first couple of visits would be really breaking that down, talking about the previous stories, being really open and honest with the decisions that she made that led up to the births that she had. A lot of the time it's just like, oh, well, that's what happens when you birth in a hospital, which is fine, it is. But there's also an accountability that needs to be spoken about of, okay, well, you made this decision and this decision. Those decisions could have led to X, Y, and Z happening. Why did you make them? Is there a pattern in your life about that? Like, that's what I like to talk about, because we are evolving creatures, and in birth and in motherhood, we are really pulled to evolve. And if we don't, then the pattern will just keep repeating itself over and over and over and over again. So if you're someone who's had a hospital birth and you're looking at a home birth or a free birth, then it's really pulling apart what happened last time and what are you going to do differently this time. Education around what birth actually is, what our bodies do, how it works, what the hormones are. So I do some work with that as well. We talk about the husband or partner's fears, expectations, and then a solid plan. If I'm not working with a registered provider, then I talk around where's the nearest hospital, what does an emergency plan look like for you, who's enacting those sort of things. So I go really into the nitty-gritty of that kind of side of things as well. That's just how I practice. Just so that at the end of the day, majority of scenarios that you would plan for in a hospital or plan for with a home birth midwife, I plan for with my clients if they're birthing outside the system as well. Just so there's like no conversation is off the table with me. We talk about what happens if there's poor outcomes and all of that sort of stuff too, just because life is life and things happen. And I think if you're going to take that radical responsibility, I don't like that term, but that's kind of the language that gets used, then the conversation around that sort of stuff as well has to happen. If you're shying away from it, or if you don't want to have those type of conversations, well, then that would be when I would push to go, okay, well, is this something you actually really want to do?
Mm. Have you had some scenarios where like free births have had to transfer or, some undesirable outcomes?
I haven't had any poor outcomes. I've had one client who decided during labour, it had been 3 days, and she just got to a point where she was like, you know what, I actually want to just go to hospital. I just want to get a Doppler used just to check that everything's okay, and then I'll make a decision from there. So I went with her. She did that, and baby arrived within an hour. So she was like, oh, and I was like, that's you used your intuition. I'm not there to say, oh, well, maybe this is transition and maybe we should just wait. Or I was just like, if that's what you want to do, then that's what we'll do. Let's go. And then I've had some that have transferred after because they felt like they might need some suturing. So they went in afterwards and got checked, and one did, one didn't. That was all went really smoothly. And then one went the next day just to get bub checked because she was like, that's easier to do the paperwork if I just go in and present in less than 24 hours. They'll do the paperwork for me. It'll make it easy to register a birth and I won't have any hassles. So, yeah. But we definitely talk about what that could look like when they choose to do that, what that could look like, what scenarios they would choose to do that for. So there's a really good understanding of what can happen then once you're either in an ambulance, you're in a car, and you're arriving at a hospital, and the temperament, climate of providers and things like that if you're walking into that space.
Mm. And are there resources that you usually suggest as far as really understanding, the physiology and the hormonal flow and what to expect, especially if they're first-time mums? And then also maybe even do you suggest like a resus course, like a, bub resus
Yep.
course and
So
things like that?
I suggest to every single one of my clients, no matter where they're birthing, that they do think about first aid and resus course. Like, it doesn't matter if you're having a planned cesarean, you're coming home at some point in time with a human being who cannot
Yeah.
speak to you and call out to you in the middle of the night, or who has a potential of choking when they first start eating, or like, you just never know. And I've had a few hairy moments with my kids. So I think that's a necessity for every single person who is bringing a baby home. So I always suggest that. And then they can go and decide whether or not they're going to and what that looks like for them. And then course-wise, the one that I really love my clients to look at and do is actually Rachel Reed's physiological birth course that she did after writing her book.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah, the course, I did the course to obviously make sure that it was safe language-wise for all of my clients, and it's a beautiful way of the course still has the story of what Eve is doing during her birth, so the story part of it, but a lot of the science and hormones and knowledge that, as a mum of 5, there was some things that I learnt doing the course. Like, because
Wow.
it's not spoken about. We don't know exactly how a woman's body works unless you've been deep in it for a very long time. So I think every woman, it doesn't matter whether my clients are birthing in a hospital or at home, it's just still something that I would recommend them doing. It's a beautiful course and great resource that she's developed. So definitely highly recommend.
Wow, 5 kids.
Yeah.
That's so impressive.
Yeah,
Is that not?
It is. We're like, we're two
Crazy
and
house.
done.
Yeah, two's enough. Is that sort of how you got into the whole birth keeping scene?
Yeah.
Through having
Yeah. So when I was a very young mum, my eldest is 25, so a long time ago, I kind of always thought, oh, maybe like when they get to school age, I could maybe be a midwife, but that's still like late hours, and the relationship I was in at the time, that just wasn't going to work, being like working night shifts and things like that. And then fast forward to my early 40s, I decided that I would have another couple of babies. So got 2 boys. And during those pregnancies and births, I was obviously geriatric pregnancy. One midwife said it once, and then it was written in my paperwork in very big red letters not to use that terminology again. I was just like, and we are done. You like, one and done on that terminology. Thank you very much. So I really noticed a difference, not just how I was treated, by how the system actually was working compared to what it was actually 20 years ago. The amount of extra ultrasounds and extra blood tests, and even the gestational diabetes. When I had my first lot, it was, if you met this criteria of risk factors, then we'll sit and talk to you about maybe you want to do this extra testing. And now it's mandatory for everybody, regardless of your risk factors and like family history and all of that sort of stuff. So I was just like, I don't know what's happening. I'm a very strong spoken woman. Not a lot gets past me. If I don't want something to happen, then it kind of just doesn't. And And I was finding it really challenging actually speaking to providers. And I was with the birth centre, and I had a beautiful, lovely team midwives, and they would say, look, we have to ask you this. And I would just go, hell no. And they'd go, yep, okay. But I still found it really challenging to have to sit in all of these appointments and say, no, I don't want this. No, I don't want that. No, I don't need an ultrasound at 36 weeks to check the size of my baby. I birthed a baby that was nearly 4.5 kilos. This is going to be the same. Like, it's okay. And I got a piece of paper sent home with an appointment time for an ultrasound that I'd already said no to. So then I rang and said, cancel the appointment, make it for someone else. I don't care, but I'm not coming to it. And then it just got me really thinking, like, if I'm starting to, like, not doubt myself, but find it challenging, how are women who are my age having their first babies, how are they coping with all of this?
Yeah.
And then, had the second of the younger two, so my fifth baby and last. Midnight feeding, Instagram was a thing then. So yeah, just was like scrolling and looking at birth accounts and all of this sort of stuff. And the word doula came up, and it was about 3:00 in the morning I first saw it. And my husband woke up the next morning, and I just said, I know what I'm doing. He goes, what do you mean? He goes, and I just said, I'm going to become a doula. He's like, what the fuck is a doula? And I'm like, cool, it's this thing, and this is what I'm going to do, and it's going to be my business, and I'm going to support women, and I've already found the course I want to do, and I connected with some other doulas that are still Insta friends of mine, some I've met in real life. I did a course. I won a scholarship for a course, actually. I did the course, and that was it. My first client was, and she won't mind me saying, she was over 40, IVF, and a feedback after 2 cesarean, free birth.
Wow.
Amazing. That's your first one?
That was my first client.
Wow.
How was it?
Oh, it was incredible.
Mind-blowing?
Like, it was just mind-blowing. Just like mind-blowing. And I was hooked.
Wow.
That would be so inspiring.
Yeah, it was just, she is an incredible woman. And just the trust even that she had in me, because she knew that she was my first client, and we'd met during a women's circle that I went to that was facilitated by a friend. And she met me then, and apparently went home to her husband and just said, oh, if this IVF works, I know who I'm going to ask to be with us on this journey. And 2 months later, I get a text message or a DM in my Instagram to say, hey, the IVF's worked. Would you be my birth keeper? And I was like,
wow.
Sure. Like, I didn't have anything. I had no website, no Instagram, no way of making an invoice. Like, I literally had nothing. And that's just what I do. I kind of was like, okay, cool. I need some stuff. And I just worked on the fly to get the business part of things going while journeying with her in her pregnancy.
How did you feel during that birth?
Oh,
like, were you nervous at all going into it?
No, not at all. No,
Wow.
I don't have any hesitation. And I think if I did, the moment that I have a hesitation walking into a birth space is the day I'll stop.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Yeah. If for some reason there's a fear that's blocking me, then it's not my job to be in that space anymore.
But even for the first one, you were a little bit like, you know how when you do something new for the first time and there's like, oh, those little nerves and apprehension.
And
like,
it was a 2-hour drive.
5 kids.
Yeah, it was like I'd had 5 kids, so I'd experienced birth. But I just have, it literally is my love and trust of other women. Like, I just trust women to know what they want to do for themselves, and who am I to say otherwise? So I was just like, no, cool. All right. Yep. You're 2 hours away. Do you want me to come now? Sure. Done. And then
imagine if your GP was like that. So good.
How good would it be? Everybody'd be getting referrals to privately practicing midwives without an issue at all.
Yeah.
And then I drove home from that birth, and it was about 3:00 in the morning that I drove home after witnessing that, and the idea for my book just landed in my head.
Yeah.
So like literally everything started from then. And I've had clients booked back to back pretty much, some small gaps, but otherwise just a successful, I suppose you'd call it, doula business ever since.
It's like when you're in your
Wow.
flow, things just come for you.
Yeah.
Like not being, not having the business side ready. It's like, yep, I'm ready now to do the thing. And universe
Yeah.
is just like, cool,
Yeah.
take it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Need some
And everything
clients.
else will happen when it's supposed to. I'm very much like that, especially in this role that I do now. Like I know that this is what I'm supposed to be doing. It will ebb and flow. And obviously I was supporting hospital births and now I'm not. And that might ebb and flow another day too. I don't know. But I just trust that this is actually what I'm supposed to be doing, that I was always supposed to be doing this. Yeah, I just needed the experience of life to make me the support that I am now.
Yeah. And the timing sometimes too.
Yeah.
Like, with kids a certain age and.
Well, Mackenzie he was 5 months old when I did the course, and he was just over 12 months old when I attended that first birth.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing. You're amazing.
No.
You are,
No.
honestly.
And that's what, okay.
Take it. I was just wondering if you could run us through some differences that you experienced, because you said you were in the hospital, for 5 years, and now you sort of mainly support women at home. What were the main differences that you noticed?
Women's ability to have autonomy is the difference. And I don't even know who it was, so if someone knows then please tell me, but I heard someone say that women have a bodily autonomy when it comes to ending a pregnancy. It's in law in this country, but when it comes to deciding on how they'll birth that baby, we don't.
It's gone. Yeah.
Yeah. So that for me it just became too blaringly obvious in a hospital system. And while I still believe that women who birth in the hospital probably need more doula support than anybody else, I just couldn't do it anymore. I thought I would leave before it broke me, or before I was actually kicked out of hospitals. Because their language around what doulas can and can't do in a hospital system is very quickly changing in the state of Queensland. So I was just like, well, I'm going to get banned from hospitals, which means that even if I transferred in with any other client, I wouldn't be allowed in. So it's probably better for me to go quietly, so that I can still have a possibility of transferring in with clients if needed.
It would be so challenging because I've attended, I'm not a birth keeper at all, but I've supported some friends birthing and some have transferred. And oh my gosh, the difference and just that environment and being that person, like trying to protect the space.
Yeah.
And it's so important. It's like you really are like a bodyguard and like having to put yourself physically.
And that literally and that's a language that a lot of the clients that were looking and asking for me were using. Like, we just need a bodyguard. And I'm like, look, I can be that. Well, I used to be. Even when I started doing this 4 or 5 years ago, I could be that bodyguard. I could stand up and speak out to what I was seeing in the room. And there was like special ways that I did it. So I wasn't speaking on behalf of my client, but talking to the room, and whoever was in the room could hear me. But now even that's becoming really hard. And it will be probably in the next 6 months, almost impossible. So I was just like, you know what, I can't. And I don't want to sugarcoat it. I can't sugarcoat anything ever. But I won't sugarcoat it for women who choose to birth in a hospital anymore.
Yeah. It's so challenging, I think, because like you also get undermined. Like if you're there with the woman and know what her preferences are, and then you've got like another provider coming in and saying this thing, like the coercion and all that. And you're like, the client would look at you and go, well, what's the truth? And you're like, well, this is the truth. And then that person's like, that's not the truth. And it's so confusing. Like that's
Yeah.
also like
Well,
a
I
whole
can't.
other layer.
As a doula, it's actually even becoming harder now to even say that this is the truth, because that can now be considered as giving medical advice. And if a provider considers that that's what you're doing, if they believe that that's what you're doing, then you're out. You're out the door. They'll kick you out. They can ban you from hospitals. There's probably going to be fines added to it. It's the environment itself is getting really, really hard to navigate, which is really sad because, as I said, like the women who are birthing in hospitals need doulas. It's not just a want. I think it's a necessity, but it's just going to get too hard, I think. And unless you're a doula, unless you're a doula who can be there for the emotional, physical support and nothing else, then that is okay. But that's not me.
That would be so hard.
Yeah, anyone who knows that I can't keep my mouth shut. Like it's just not me.
But also the main reason that you're there is to help the woman feel like she's got this, she's in control, you know, she's the one in the driver's seat, she's birthing this baby. And then all the language that they're using, making her feel like, oh, we're going to take over, we're going to do this. You couldn't stand back. Like you ugh.
No.
Yeah.
No. In the last probably 6-7 months, the amount of rhetoric that I've heard and coercion that I've heard has really ramped up, which is, I think it's since 2020, I think hospitals got used to not having extra people. And I think they kind of liked that and are a little bit more like, oh, well, that was easier to deal with. It was easier just to walk into a space and say this thing, and that a woman would go, okay then, and that was it. And there wasn't anyone else there to go, actually, you have options. Let's talk about the brain thing, and like, where's the evidence? Ask, like, what questions do you have? They just, they're really not being very tolerant of that. And that's not all, no, but that argument is used for a lot of things, right? That it's not all, but it's some, and then those some are being witnessed by a lot, and it's the a lot that don't say anything.
Yeah.
That then sort of magnifies the problem.
Good one. Hard.
Yeah. Anyway.
Have you noticed an increase? This is a little bit of an off-topic question, but because since COVID, you know, I think a lot of people started to really consider their birthing choices because of all that drama.
Yeah.
You know, like the restrictions around
yes.
having a doula or having your partner being able to come back. And have you noticed, like, since 2020, like an increase in the free birth rates in the areas that you support women?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, the minute that there was restrictions put on hospitals, all of the home birth midwives noticed it was like a 500% uptake just in Queensland alone. Like, to be a private practicing midwife, then you were saying no to women. You were like, I physically cannot take any more on. So they were like women, I suppose, who had planned to birth in a hospital, who like looked at that and went, okay, no, so I'll go home birth midwife and I'll have a home birth. And then there was other women who were like, well, even that's becoming, depending on who you were with, that was becoming a little bit more strict too. There were a lot of private practicing midwife groups that were starting to put out other restrictions. And a lot of them were ringing me and other women around going, look, I actually don't want to go with them either. What's my other option? And I'm like, well, have you heard of a thing called free birth? And they're like, yeah, we have. So have you got availability? The one thing I don't like that's a huge misconception in this arena is that women only choose it because of fear of hospitals or because of a trauma that they've had before. I've worked with lots of women, and I know other people who have worked with women who that's not their reality at all. Like, they're not doing it because of trauma. They're not doing it because of fear. They're just doing it because they trust their bodies to birth. And 100 years ago, that's how women birth. Like 120 years ago, whatever, it's 2020, right? Not, or 2024, not like the year 2000. It's like, that's how we used to do it. So there's a lot of women who are just like, I don't actually need anyone. And if I do, I know they're there, but I'm just going to do this thing on my own. Like, I've had first time mums who are just like, nah, I'm all good.
Yeah.
Like, okay, great. So there's this can be this thing of, oh, well, it's just because women are afraid. And if we change the hospitals, or if we get licensing for privately practicing midwives, and if we have a home birth program, then these women will stop free birthing. Like,
No.
you're missing the mark on that. It's a completely different way of birthing. It's a completely different way of trusting birth. It's not because of. Some women maybe that's the seed that was planted to look for something different, but it's never the catalyst to go, I'm just going to denounce everything else and do this regardless. It's an educated thought process that they just have with themselves or their partners, their family members, things like that. I've had grandmothers that have sat in a lounge room of a house that they were born in, watching their granddaughters have their great granddaughter.
Wow.
In the same house. And she was just like, well, this is how I was born. We didn't have a midwife in, like, when I was born. This is just what you do.
Yeah. Wow.
So,
No generational
So
trauma
amazing.
there.
No, none at all.
that.
None at all. And all the other kids there was a baby number 4, and all the other kids were in the room and all saw it. And there was a niece there as well. It's not women doing it because of fear of the hospital system. And I think there's a lot of conversation around that, especially in Australia at the moment, but there's a couple of other countries as well. And I'm just like, it's just, you're missing the point. And you're missing the numbers of women doing it too.
Yeah, I think there's definitely people I have met that chose it because they couldn't find a midwife.
Yep.
I think it's not completely none, but it's not all.
I would say from the clients that I've supported, and the other birth workers, obviously there's like a bit of a community. Some of us know each other. I would say there's a small percentage maybe that can't afford a private practicing midwife or can't find one in their area. But majority are just, no, this is just what we want to do.
I just want to do it.
Yeah. And the numbers, I find it really funny that people try and research it and come up with numbers and percentages and things like that, because no one's got any idea of how many women do this every single day in every part of this country, and then obviously around the world, but it happens a lot.
Yeah, I agree. The stats would be so much higher for out of hospital birth if we included free birth in those. But we're never going to capture it because, so many people don't want to be captured.
Oh, no.
Like they don't want to register their baby or
they register their baby, but you don't, when you register a baby, you don't have to, it's a little bit more awkward, sometimes a little bit more time consuming, but it doesn't get registered as a free birth. It just gets registered as born before arrival.
Yes.
Like on paperwork, if there's paperwork, but otherwise you just register an actual birth. They never ask you anything about, did you plan a free birth? That's not written down anywhere. It's just no, it's just birth, deaths, the marriages going, oh, you've had a baby? Great. Okay, cool. Yep. Great. Here's your documentation. You're done.
Yeah.
So no.
Nicole, do you have any advice for people that are thinking about birthing at home, whether that's, you know, a home birth or a free birth? Like, how can they make that decision? Did you have any advice for people in that situation?
If you want to birth at home, sit in with yourself as to why and what that looks like for you. And then you can, I mean, I spoke to someone the other day and I'm like, why don't you speak to a couple of private practicing midwives, get a feel for what they do, what they offer, what they bring. Speak to doulas. Don't just, I mean, if you ring one and you've seen her on Instagram, like I've had some that have like peed on a stick and they've rung me straight away and gone, oh my God, I've been watching you forever and I just like, I want you. Okay, great. But otherwise, like, speak to people over the phone, via Zoom, in person. Get as much knowledge as you can, but a lot of it I think needs to be internal, like, because especially when you're talking about free birth, because once you mention that, the conversations that you have from other people can maybe sow seeds of doubt. And I know that happens with people who are planning a home birth as well. Like sometimes you actually have to be cautious around who you're telling that you're going to have a home birth, because it's not as accepted in this country as you would think. A lot of people have a lot of opinions. If you said to someone, I'm going to go and have a planned cesarean next week, majority of people would go, okay, cool. What date? Like, I'll when can I come and see the baby? If you say you're having a home birth, you'll get a lot of, are you sure? Like, this is what happened to me, and all that sort of stuff. And that if you told someone you're having a free birth, unless it's within that sort of community and bubble, then you'll get a lot of pushback. So it's just really making the decision for yourself and then finding the people that you believe need to be in that space with you to give you the vision of birth that you already have. Like, have the vision already and then find the people who are going to support that.
Yeah, I love that. And because have we released it yet? Stacey's full interview, Banks?
I think
have we
I
released it yet?
Almost. Yeah, it's on YouTube. It's ready to go.
I saw a snippet
at the moment.
Yeah,
it'll be ready by this time.
It should be ready. Yeah, because by the time we drop this one, because she started off as a home birth, thinking, "Yep, I'm 100% home birth, got a midwives, everything, going through the whole process," and then just suddenly had a really strong intuitive hit that she had to do it herself, do a free birth, and so she made that bold decision, which is really hard to do if you've already lined everything up as well. But she knew, and it was right for her. That was exactly what she needed to do.
Yeah.
So,
and knowing her, yes, absolutely. It's exactly what she needed. It's exactly what she needed to do. So, yeah.
It's such a good, we'll have to, I'm going to go back and watch it again, even though I edited it anyway.
I can't wait to watch the whole thing.
Thanks.
Yeah.
It's been
it's your birth, so you get to decide what it looks like, what it feels like, how you're left feeling, how your baby is left feeling and treated, and then do some research about what your options are, what the risks and benefits are of all of the different options. And that's why I love the fact that free birth is being spoken about, because it is actually an option. It's not an option for everybody. Absolutely not. But it is an option that women can consider for themselves.
Yes.
Yeah, wouldn't it be amazing if it was like, oh, I'm pregnant. Oh, are you going hospital, home birth, or free birth?
Yeah,
and it was just like normal,
well,
you know.
It is in the circles that I go in. That is, but like as a whole, like I would love that. Like I would love that if people were like, oh, like did you have a free birth? Oh no, I had a midwife. Oh, okay, cool. How was that?
Home birth.
Like whatever.
Yeah.
Like did you birth at home? Oh, great, cool. And not even I would just like there just to be, and that's the title of my book. Like it is just a magically ordinary day. Like it's just this ordinary event, right? Like the women who have had it, we know if you've had it or seen it or both, like it's just an ordinary event. My hope is that one day that's what the majority think birth is. Totally. Not the minority.
And speaking of your book, can you tell us?
I don't have a copy of it here.
Oh, you don't?
No, I've sold out. I'm waiting for the next lot to arrive from the printer.
Sold out.
Yeah, I've
There you
sold
go.
out. Third time sold out.
Nice.
Yeah, tell people about it and where they can get it.
So you can. It's on pre-order now on my website. Hopefully, by the time this drops, it'll be live again. It is called My Most Magically Ordinary Day, and it is a children's book about a family who are having a home birth without medical providers. So they are having a free birth, and yeah, that's just what it is. It's just a magically ordinary day. A baby is born, and it just tells the journey of a little girl, Sage, who's 4, and it's what she gets to hear and feel and experience during that time.
That'd be so good to read if you had older siblings and you were pregnant.
Yep, that's why I wrote it.
Yeah.
Yep, I wrote it as a way of education. There is a couple of beautiful children's books when I first started this work that speak about home birth, which is great. So I have that copy, and if a family was having a home birth and they had older kids, then I would lend them this book, and the little kids loved it. But there wasn't one about free birth. I couldn't find one. I searched high and low. So then I was like, you know what? I've had this idea sitting in my head for about 4 years. I'm just going to do it. So I ripped the Band-Aid off and have one. So now that the whole purpose of it was that I could give my clients a book that they could read to their children.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so nice.
And now people are buying it all around the world. So, you know.
Woohoo! It's so beautiful. We had a copy at one of our our things, and I had to leaf through it, and I was like, oh my God, this is such a beautiful book. All the illustrations.
Yeah. And it's nice and bright and colourful, which is engaging for kids. And there's a lot of little bits and pieces, so that even if they aren't at a reading age, I wanted them to be able to flick through the book and make up their own story based on the images that they had, that they saw. So, yeah.
Amazing. Well, thanks so much, Nicole, for chatting with us today.
My pleasure.
I highly recommend people go and get that book, especially if you're a doula or a birth worker. How good would that be to have as a resource to lend out to families? But we will wrap it up here. And where can people find you? On Instagram.
I am all over Instagram all the time. So it's Nicole and Birthkeeper. That's where I hang out. If I'm not with a client at a birth, then I'm on Insta. So it's Nicole and Birthkeeper. My website is nicoleandbirthkeeper.com.au. I have a website.
We'll put those links in the show notes as well.
Yeah, excellent.
Yeah,
thank you.
We'll put it all in there.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for all the work you do, and I hope this has inspired some people to make some bold decisions and listen to their heart and decide where they actually want to birth and who they want to do it with. Yeah. And if you want Nicole there, now you've got another amazing doula.
DMs.
Yeah.
Yes,
slide into my DMs.
All right. Thanks, guys.
It's so good to see you
Bye.
again.
Bye.